Sports Intel with Ryan Walsh is brought to you by
Mary Freebed, Collectible Insurance Services, Eric Hall, Aesthetic and General Dentistry, Calder Financial, Grand Management Group, Rydan Investments, Encore Business Group, JH Realty, and Williams Chiropractic.
Sports Intel with Ryan Walsh airs live Monday nights, 7 p.m. Eastern on Jethro.fm. Sports Intel with Ryan Walsh.
Stay informed and stay vigilant. Jeff Isaac on the board, and it's apt. We're talking about the board, so we always celebrate the National Day, Jeff, and it's National Game and Puzzle Week, specifically board games. So I'm curious if you have a favorite board game. This is what I'll be asking all the guests as well.
My favorite board game right now is Aggravation.
Is that just you go around and you like poke people, or is that actually it's a board game?
It's an old board game. I grew up with it with my grandparents, and then when the pandemic hit and my kids had nothing to do when I was home, I ordered a bunch of board games off Amazon.
Classic.
And I had to get Aggravation, and they loved it. It was Aggravation, Sorry, Monopoly got too dangerous, too physical.
Oh yeah, Monopoly gets aggressive. You can't play calm Monopoly. It just doesn't. It doesn't work like that. My family likes to play Aggravation, but they don't play the board game. They just play Aggravation.
Right. That just aggravate each other.
Exactly. Yeah, they just play it for fun. But my favorite. So when I was young, Mom's in studio with us too. And when I was young, we had a game called Tornado Rex, and it was where you had a little top at the top of a mountain, and you press a button, you'd spin it up, and you press a button, and it'd be basically it's supposed to be like a Tasmanian devil, and it would go down the mountain and knock all your little pieces that you were trying to climb up the mountain, and then the Tornado Rex would go down the mountain. It's a very silly sounding board game, but we loved it.
Sounds fun.
As kids, yeah. I've seen it a few times recently. I think that, like all the games, got a little bit of a revival during the pandemic. That was one benefit of the pandemic. There obviously weren't many. There were a lot of bad things that happened, but it was nice to see people getting into their hobbies. That's what happened. I have a sports memorabilia background. That's what I wrote my book in, and that's what happened with sports memorabilia too. They got out all their old cards. They got their tickets. They couldn't go to the games, so they had to have some connection to sports because sports were shut down for a while. Besides, Japanese baseball, I think was still going at that time. But yeah, so we've got a good show lined up. We've got kind of our typical subject matters. We got Pistons at 7:15 with Eric Vincent of Clutch Sports, and then we've got Zach and Carlo from the Hockeytown Rundown podcast at 7:45, and then Zach Surdenik, who's the Lakeland play-by-play guy and also the MSU basketball host, will be coming on and talking some hoops with us and probably some baseball too. Jeff's a baseball fan, I just found out, so maybe we'll talk some baseball with him. But I figured so Jeff always has to take the request on Saturday. He's got a great show and everybody calls in. They play all these songs that I probably don't recognize because as fans of the show know I'm more of a heavy metal fan, but I'm sure they're great songs. And I do like the old country. That's the version of country that I like. It's the classic country. But I figured we'll do, since it's board game week, we'll have you be the requester, Jeff, and I've got some subject matters. We obviously got the Lions game. I was going to ask you a couple questions about your request show. That's a subject matter. We already did favorite board game. Thanksgiving, because we got that coming up, and we got a show on Thanksgiving, actually, Shane and I, so we've got some things planned there. I have some curiosity about Thanksgiving. I went to IU for school, so they're doing very well. So I always try to put them on there. Nobody chooses that, but some of the Michigan State guys do because they don't want to talk about them. So we'll end up talking about IU. You got Michigan, OSU. Do you have a college team that you root for, Jeff?
It's Michigan.
Is it Michigan?
Yes.
So that's the big one here.
Yes.
That's the big one coming up. Do you think they have a chance?
I believe they do have a chance because I still believe that this team is still in their head.
I mean, it's kind of like, prove it. It's like, well, prove it to me that you can beat us, and they haven't done that yet. Last year was the year that I think you would get into somebody's head, because that's the year that, I mean, all hope was pretty much lost at that point in time. And then that game just they turned that game on its head. So the deficit between Michigan and Ohio State is not greater than last year. So if they won last year, they've got a dynamic quarterback and Bryce Underwood. We've been talking about this some that shows some because Michigan will be back. They're always back. That you knew this was going to be a little bit of a down year, quote unquote, but they've just got a young team. They lost so many coaches, so many players over the last 2 or 3 seasons that you've got to reload. And even though you've got the transfer portal and everything there and access to NIL money, you still got a young team, but I wouldn't be surprised because nobody's really given Ohio State much of a run because the way this is going to go is if they do beat Michigan, then they're going to likely play Indiana in the Big Ten championship. And so I don't know what to root for in the Michigan game because it's like if nobody's given them a run, then they might be a little bit more vulnerable and say, Indiana, they've never been good. We'll be able to beat them, but they can't take Michigan lightly either. So maybe they put a little too many resources into Michigan and then come out a little flat if they do end up playing Indiana in the Big Ten championship here.
Well, and even if Ohio State loses Saturday, they're still going to make the playoffs.
Yeah, they're still in.
So they still have a chance at seeing Indiana. So let's root for Michigan Saturday.
That sounds good to me.
And then a first-round matchup between Indiana and Ohio State and have Indiana win and knock them out in the first round.
Yeah, that sounds good to me. Yeah, Ohio State losing, I mean, we can't agree on a lot of things nowadays, but I feel like outside of Ohio, that's the main thing that people will be able to agree about because that's the one thing that Indiana will have going for them. If they do play them in the Big Ten championship, they won't be favored. I'm well aware of that, but they're going to come in. I think Ohio State could underrate them a little bit, and every neutral fan in that arena will be rooting for Indiana. There will not be a single neutral fan, whether they're from Michigan or Wisconsin or Minnesota or wherever they're traveling from. They're not rooting for, if they don't have a previous connection to Ohio State, they're not rooting for the Buckeyes.
And the Big Ten championship game is in Indianapolis,
exactly.
Right?
Oh, yeah. So absolutely. So you got kind of a home, and I mean those fans are going to be so pumped. I mean, I went to school there in the early 2000s and had season tickets. We had to take the picture for the stadium on the day that they played Ohio State because that's when it all looked like it was red and white, but it was just Ohio State fans. Right. That's the only time it was populated. So that's when we would take the picture. Now the stadium's packed. Those fans are mobilized. They're motivated, and it is fun to watch. So then the other teams, the Michigan fans like you, the Michigan State fans, whoever it is, all the other fans in the Big Ten are gonna then rally behind Indiana and go, hey, this is a fun team to root for. I think it's the same thing that Detroit kind of has. It's fun to be a Detroit fan. We were talking about this before the show a little bit because you grew up in the time where it wasn't as much fun to be a Detroit fan, and then there's been ups and downs there, and now your son's getting a little bit better experience, but it's fun too now because this is I've made the argument before. I think this is America's team now. I mean, it's not Dallas. Dallas is not America's team. We're done with that, right?
Well, Dallas won Sunday, so they're back.
So they're back.
Little bit,
they're America's team now. Yeah,
there's no question. The Lions are because they've lost for so long. And I think people literally felt bad for Detroit Lions fans, just like Cleveland. I think if Cleveland started winning, they would become more popular around the country because it's so sad to watch us lose for all these years. And when we started winning, the camera shots of the emotional of the fans, these kids crying because they're remembering their father that took them to the games and their dad's no longer around and they're winning playoff games. I think that it literally touched the people's hearts, and now they're rooting for this underdog, this team that's been beat up for decades and are finally winning. How can you not root for this team?
I remember that the chart, they did a chart, they did some sort of survey when the Lions lost to the 49ers in the NFC Championship 2 years ago. They did a survey when there were 4 teams left. It was Detroit, San Francisco, Kansas City, and Baltimore. And they basically had a map of the country, and it was basically each state was a color. And obviously Kansas and Missouri were both for Kansas City. Yep. So that's because they're on the border there. So they got those two. California was obviously for San Francisco. Then you had kind of a weird one because Baltimore The Ravens had both Maryland and actually Kentucky because Lamar Jackson had so many fans from Louisville from his college days. Okay. So he got that state. All the other states, Honolulu blue. And I thought that was so cool, that just seeing that the country so blue to represent the Lions. And yeah, now I think that's still carrying forward. Last Sunday, they gave us a little bit more heart palpitations than we wanted. I think the Jameis Winston experience I usually enjoy, but I did not enjoy it on Sunday because he was a little too good. Yeah. And he can be good. There's a reason he was the number one pick, number one overall the year before Goff. So I mean, they played against each other, the two number one picks of those successive years, 2015 and 2016, I believe. But they played a good game. You got to give the Giants credit for playing a good game. The Lions didn't play their best game, but it all amounts in a W in the win column here.
Yeah, the Giants did what they've been doing lately, and that's losing leads in the fourth quarter. They just don't know how to win yet. They'll get there. The Lions, I remember the first 2 years of
Dan Campbell.
Yeah. We didn't know how to win. We didn't know how to close out a game. And once you get that confidence, the Giants will get there.
You make a good point, because I could see this team, if they hadn't lost, I mean, Jackson Dart was starting to go really well. Cam Scadaboo was having a great season. Neighbors got hurt earlier in the season. If they hadn't lost all those guys, I could see this being that type of team, especially with Kafka looked really good. Mike Kafka, who was at Kansas City and then took over in an interim basis, he might take over that team because he's been looking okay. We'll have to see who they try to go after, but he's a guy that never really got a shot as a head coach, kind of like a Campbell. This is how Campbell started. He was the interim coach for Miami. Then nobody really wanted him for a little while, and then Detroit called him, and the rest is history. But I think people forget. Now people look back and go, "Well, I wish I had him as my coach." There's probably about 25 teams in the league that would want him over their coach, but he was available to pretty much all those teams. He wasn't getting interviews with anybody.
No, I think with Detroit, his grit and can you imagine that interview that he would have had with that?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, I would have loved to have been a fly on the wall in that interview room.
He does I've seen him. It would have been interesting to see him with Holmes. Obviously, we know his buddies with Holmes now, but to see him with Sheila Ford Hamp, who is very tiny, and obviously Martha Ford's even tinier, but they're very tiny. He does a good job of changing his. I just saw a video the other day, and it was him greeting some. I think they were World War II veterans that had been to the game, and they were all in wheelchairs and were on the field, and he did such a good job of changing his profile. Like, he got a lot smaller, which is tough for him. He's a former blocking tight end. He's a big guy. And then one of the veterans stood up, and Campbell said, "No, sir, no, don't stand up for me. Sit down. Come on, don't stand up." He said, "I want to see how big you are." And then Campbell stood up straight, and then the guy's face was hilarious because he was like, "Oh wow, he's huge." But I'm sure he was trying to be a little bit more tame around Sheila Hamp, but yeah, he can't harness that intensity. No. He's always intense all the time, but in the most authentic, realistic way. That's, I think, what escaped some people in the initial press conference, because you're biting kneecaps, you're doing that stuff, and then you see emotion, you see authenticity after that, and you go, "Oh, okay, this guy's actually got levels to him. He's not just going out there and saying we're going to be tougher than everybody else," because Patricia also wanted to be tougher than everybody else, and that didn't work so well with the pencil behind his ear there.
Right. I remember, Patricia shaved the beard, looked all clean.
Yeah.
That lasted, 3 weeks?
Oh, yeah. And then he told one of the reporters to sit up straight in one of the meetings. He was trying to do that tough guy stuff. He was trying to fake it. Campbell is that for real. So, it's like you said, he's a perfect fit for this team. And I think we're finding that with the other sports, too, because we're going to bring on Eric Vincent in a second. And JB Bickerstaff is a perfect fit for the Pistons. They're finding getting these gritty coaches that maybe weren't wanted by other franchises, or other franchises had a chance, but they fit the Detroit culture and grit. We've been talking about that a lot the last few weeks because it's kind of a cyclical thing. The culture is gritty, so then they produce gritty coaches and players, and that's what's drawn to there, because it's not a New York, it's not an LA, it's not the glitz and glamour, it's not a big market. It's a gritty Midwest, hardworking, blue-collar town, and they need somebody to match that, and they have that in a lot of these coaches. So it's fun to watch. Like you said, you've been waiting for this for a long time, and now it's fun that it's here. I can't believe that all these teams are good at the same time to a degree too. So, but yeah, so we're going to bring on Eric Vincent after the break. We're going to talk about the grit of the Pistons and the fact that they seemingly are not going to lose. I don't know. Eric will tell us maybe.
Amazing?
Yeah.
You would think like they don't feel any pressure to keep this winning streak going. None at all. They just go out and play.
I was reading an article I think actually this morning, where they were talking about how there's so much synergy that we're not even aware of here, because November 24th, I think, will be the chance to have the 14th win here in a row. That's they had their 14th loss in a row 2 seasons ago on November 24th against Indiana. So we're in this wild, like, parallel universe thing where it's all flipped in basically 2 seasons here. So I'm sure these guys are having a lot more fun covering it here. So we'll bring on Eric of Clutch Sports after the break and bring him into the conversation, see what he thinks of the Pistons season so far. So stick with us. You're listening to Sports Intel on Jethro FM. A beat writer. He's been on the beat for a little while. He currently works for Clutch Sports, which is an appropriate name here because right now they've got one of the most clutch scorers in the league, and the team seemingly can't lose. So this is Eric Vincent. And Eric, we always celebrate the thing of the day, and the thing this week is National Game and Puzzle Week. So does Eric Vincent have a favorite board game?
Ooh, favorite board game. I had a lot of Monopoly Wars, in the Vincent household. So, I didn't win a lot, but I appreciated the energy with my family and being competitive with my brother. So, I'd say Monopoly probably would be the one for me.
My producer Jeff and I were talking about that in the first segment. I don't think Monopoly is a game that you can play calmly. You can't play that in a calm manner. Like, there's no hey, we had a nice, happy game of Monopoly and everybody was happy at the end. No, there's fighting. There's that little Scottish terrier is flying. The thimble is flying. There's money everywhere. No, I wanted Boardwalk. I wanted Park Place. You can't play that in a calm manner.
Yeah, if we played Monopoly or Uno, be prepared to hate each other the next day, because there's going to be some foul words going, a lot of bad energy going, and it's going to carry on. We're not going to just forgive it before we go to bed. Now we're lingering and very bitter. We had to take the L. So my energy a lot.
We had that in my family with spoons. We would pull. There was one famous one where I pulled my cousin, who's about 250 pounds, over the table with a spoon, and then deposited him on the other side, and then put my foot into him and pulled the spoon out of his hand. So he got a little intense, but we were both actually laughing the whole time. Him and I actually get along very well, so it was funny. But yeah, so we wanted to talk about the board game, but man, we got to talk about the games that the Pistons are having, because we were talking about the evolution in the Detroit sports scene in general, and I mean, it's never been, I guess, better outlined than by this Pistons team, because I mean, we talked the turnaround last year was talked about a lot, but I mean, they're taking this into another gear this year, and it's like they continue to surprise us. I don't know what your expectations were. I expected them to be pretty good. It's a wide open East. You and a lot of your colleagues and a lot of the national media kind of covered that aspect, but right now you've got a team that's had a lot of injuries already. Ivy just had his season debut, hasn't been in. They've had some very odd starting lineups so far and some very odd rotations, but they just can't find a way to lose. They're just finding ways to win, and usually winning pretty handily. And if they don't win handily, then Cade steps up in the clutch, like you wrote in your recent article. But what do you make of this team so far?
I'm loving where they're at right now, man. It's been pretty exciting to see how I want to say how quick the turnaround is, but how high the turnaround has gotten for them. I mean, obviously making the playoffs last year for the first time in 5 years, taking the Knicks, down, or not taking them down, but giving them everything they could handle in a 6-game series, and looking like they were basically capable of playing against anybody. And now they're in a position where I think J.B. Bickerstaff's culture, their foundation, and their identity as a defensive-minded team that also doesn't like to play like every other team in the NBA. Like, you see a lot of teams like to shoot a million threes and play the perimeter game. The Pistons play their own game. They play physical on defense, and they wear you out, in the paint. And it's been a successful recipe for them, a great start to the season so far. And, you were talking about the Detroit sports culture. I kind of just love for the Pistons how whenever they are successful, they're like the disruptors of the NBA. Like the Bad Boys were the disruptors for Jordan and Larry Bird and the Lakers with Magic back in the day. Then the 2004 Pistons knocking off Kobe and Shaq. And, the Pistons, doing their thing now in a wide open East where nobody expects them to be as good as they are. And they're taking on the same mantra of those two teams for the Pistons for the past in the same fashion. So it's been really exciting to see it, especially with a young core that's finally coming together, that's finally healthy. It's really exciting to see where they've started off so far this early in the season.
What this is telling me is we need a name for this group, but I don't know. The Going to Work group really had to grow on me. That one, because compared to the Bad Boys, that was really... It was kind of inferior, especially at the beginning, and it was a little wordy. And so, but I think we're going to need a name for this group because, yeah, they do have a similar intensity. And in the modern day, it is hard to play this way. Like, just from a rules standpoint, it's hard to play this way. They really push the envelope. They make the refs make calls, and when they do, that's fine. They're always pretty high on the foul count. Thompson struggled with that. Duran's struggled with that. Even Cade gets a decent amount of fouls because, yeah, they're all playing tough. But I'm amazed that a team can pull this off in the modern day because they've tried to litigate so that they don't have another Bad Boys type team, so that we're not having these battles of the 90s teams of, the Pistons. Then we had the Knicks and the Heat and a lot of these teams that would brawl underneath the hoop. They've kind of litigated that out of the game to a degree, but the Pistons are trying to bring it back here.
Yeah, you were talking about a name for them. So they've had a little nickname for some of their front court guys. They go by the Dog Pound.
Yep, I've heard that one.
Duran and Stu and Rod Holland, Asar, Tobias. But considering how they're playing defensively now, they've kind of all adapted that mindset of a defensive-minded foundation and team. And it seems to be working for them. And like you said, to be doing that in this era as well is not easy. But I've been saying, in my articles and even on my YouTube page as well, Top Title Detroit, I've been saying I feel like the way the Pistons are playing is kind of saving the NBA. Because if you just look at a lot of superstars, there's a lot of great talent around the league. There's a lot of great players, a lot of really fun people to watch, but they do some lazy habits like the foul baiting thing where they're kind of just flailing into contact to get free throws and not really playing a real systematic style where they just kind of come down and shoot a bunch of threes or find one-on-one looks. The Pistons actually run sets. They have real communication. They have actual flow and movement through their team that has everybody involved. And of course they have guys that can go get their own. Cade is one of the best one-on-one players in the league. Ivy's a good one-on-one player. Duran's finding his rhythm as an offensive scorer. But it's really refreshing to see that, like you said, that kind of style from the 90s or the early 2000s, that can still work. Not granted, the league just pushes back on it a little bit. They definitely call a lot of fouls, but it's granting them winning basketball right now. And I think it's something that can be sustained, especially for a young team like they have right now.
Cough, cough, James Harden with that foul baiting thing. There's others, but no, I'm with you because I like this style. I've always liked this style of game, and I think that's a great point because the toughness is not underrated. The toughness is highlighted a lot in this team. But when you've got guys like Duran and Thompson and Stewart, the same guys that want to be these dog pound guys, they really like a nice kind of like Hoosiers style back cut with a pass underneath. Like they really like a nice passing game. So for guys that want to be gritty and tough and bang underneath, they have a great feel for the game. That's one thing that I always kind of lamented with people for Duran, because he comes into the league, he's got an NBA body, he's a young guy, but he looks older, he looks bigger, he looks tougher. So I think people are trying to get him ready sooner than he was. But then it was, oh well, he's a back to the basket guy, he's a rebounder. But he always had a nice feel for the game. He has he has an underrated handle. He's got good vision for a big guy. And Stewart and some of those other guys seem to have that same thing, which is amazing, because with the way they play, to be able to slow down and also be able to see that cutter, and not only have Cade, who's one of the game's best passers, be able to hit all these people for an alley-oop or a nice pass. They'll get Cade on an alley-oop, or they'll get Cade on a nice pass underneath. It's not just Cade that has to control the offense. Arguably, he's the one that's the impetus in the passing, because that's the offense he's created, but it's nice to see everybody else participating.
Yeah, you see that in today's league where people talk about being positionless, but normally that kind of applies to who you guard defensively. Offensively, it's like you said, it's very different. Like we saw Jalen Duran talk to the media during media day, and he said JB Biggerstaff kind of gave him the green light to open his game up. So now when he snatches the ball, off the glass for a defensive rebound, he's not always looking for Cade to, okay, come get the ball and bring it up. No, he's bringing it up the floor and setting the table on offense. Or, they'll let Tobias bring it up, or Asar, which has helped them a lot, because we know Cade Cunningham is one of the most double-team and triple-team players in the NBA. So they've needed to kind of expand and have other guys step up and kind of, take the reins to create some of that space for Cade. And even having Ivy back now as well, that just kind of opens them up a little bit more to be even more unpredictable. And like what they always talk about, when you have that buy-in and when you want to play for each other, and, you're able to, like you said, spread the ball around, set the screens, do the dirty work kind of stuff to, set up your teammates. Like those are the kind of things that show how special this team can be and how focused and locked in they are. Because while people talk so much about them potentially making a move and maybe making a splash trade and whatnot, when you have chemistry and the cohesiveness of a team with the depth that they have and an incredible coach that they have, it limits the necessity to plunge for those kind of huge deals. It's not to say that they can't, improve in certain areas of their roster, but it just kind of gives them that freedom to say, hey, we could make a move right now, but the ball is in our court. We're winning and playing great basketball. We're growing young players. We're really figuring this out, and we're playing, winning basketball, which is something they've been aiming to do for years. So it's really encouraging to see, given the position that they're in right now with this young foundation.
It is amazing. I mean, it's now people are already talking about the trade deadline, and I do want to talk about that a little bit if they would make a move. So I think we'll take a quick break and kind of come back with that, because I agree with you. I mean, I think there's a lot of things about this team that are showing they don't necessarily need one, but you also maybe need to consolidate some pieces to get different guys some more minutes and more looks. So we'll come back with Eric Vincent of Clutch Points, and we'll be right back. Keep on listening to Sports Intel on Jethro FM. And looking at I follow your writing on there, but I was bouncing around to some of the other articles. And one of the things that gave me a little bit of a chuckle was there was an article there by, I think, one of your colleagues over there talking about how Kendrick Perkins was talking about the possibility of an Anthony Davis trade to the Pistons. And I've seen this from two places. I've seen it there Kendrick Perkins, presumably he was the one that started it, and then also NBA Centel. So I don't know what to make that. Those are my two sources, because NBA Centel is notorious for making things up that sound kind of real. So I don't know what to do with those things, but I'm in your camp, Eric. This is a team that's working really well, and if you're going to bring a piece in, especially a big piece like that, you got to make sure it fits in the chemistry of the team here.
Yeah, that's a big question mark for him right now. And I don't even want to say it's a question mark, because I feel like Tratehn, Langdon, and the Pistons have been able to accelerate their winning process so much right now, to the point where Tratehn should probably be on the phone, entertaining some calls and some ideas. But based on how they've started thus far, I don't think they need to be the ones initiating these kind of calls. So, yeah, maybe there was a conversation that what Kendrick Perkins was talking about for Anthony Davis. But I feel like it was the Dallas Mavericks who may have initiated that, because when you're sitting number one in the East and it's based on the back of your young core and the young foundation that you have, that's the most important thing you want for this team. That's more important than the team winning and it being on the back of, like, the veterans. Like, it would be a problem for the Pistons right now if Tobias Harris was scoring, like, 25 a game, or Karis LeVert had to score 20-plus. And, like, Duren was, struggling in foul trouble and didn't really have an offensive flow to his game. The fact that the young guys, on this core have proven and shown that they're, valuable for the ways that they're needed, whether it's Asar's defense or, Ivy's, versatile offense, or the lob capability and the offensive capability for Duren, and then the MVP level play of Cade Cunningham, knowing that you see that greatness from them and you've kind of answered that question, it shows how far that they've come. Now the next question is, how far can they take it? Because, unfortunately, we didn't get to see Ivy versus the Knicks. We didn't see Beef Stew in that series against the Knicks in the playoffs. So if they can stay healthy and kind of, ride this out and see where it takes them, that's really the biggest priority for this team. And, again, as we've been saying, it's taking them in a winning direction, which is their most important thing.
Well, that's the only type of trade that I would want to see if they were going to do something, is more a consolidation of the pieces, because they've had kind of the perfect scenario where they've been winning without some of those key pieces. They haven't had to lean heavily on a lot of the veterans. Those guys have gotten rest, which is nice. And now we've had some feature roles for guys like Dennis Jenkins and Paul Reed, and Javonte Green has gotten a lot of minutes, showing that these guys, they're not going to be maybe the next stars or whatever, although we're hearing a lot about Dennis Jenkins right now. It shows the value of them to their own team, so then you can maybe consolidate some pieces and say, okay, we can depend on those guys for more minutes, so we know we can subtract this guy and this guy. These contracts work out, and we'll bring in a valuable piece that can also be part of the rotation. But I will say that probably wouldn't be Anthony Davis in my mind. It would be somebody else that would be more of a rotation player. He's a guy that seems to not necessarily be a culture guy. He's more of like he's more of the LeBron style to me, that the sum of the individuals has to be greater than the parts, where they've got to put all those stars together and then it eventually works. Whereas the Pistons are kind of the opposite, where the sum of the parts are greater than the individual parts. But it's interesting because, like you said, they didn't have Stewart last season for the playoff run, and they didn't have Ivy and Thompson really at the same time healthy, and now they haven't had that yet this season because Ivy's just getting back in, and that's another piece that we have to see how that fits, and more minutes they're going to have to find, because they have done very well without him, but he's going to be a very welcome addition back to the court too, because like you said, it's funny because I feel like one of the main points of conversation in the offseason was, well, they need a secondary ball handler. They need somebody that can take the pressure off of Cade. Now they've brought in LeVert. Dennis has really risen to the occasion with his injury minutes, and now you've got Ivy coming back. Now they almost have too many. I don't think that's a need anymore. I don't know about you.
Yeah, I don't really think it's a bad thing to ever have, too many creators, especially when they buy in and understand the flow of the game. Because, even back to last season, when they lost Ivy, they lost another, primary ball handler on their team, but they went and got Dennis Schroeder, who was a godsend for them. He was fantastic in the playoffs, really good in late stretches and fourth quarters to help close games for him next to Cade Cunningham. And, obviously he's in a different situation now. But, with the other guys around him now stepping up, whether it was Asar stepping up as a ball handler, Ivy coming back and, kind of taking the reins and being more comfortable as a ball handler. And, again, we've talked about Duren as well. He's been comfortable enough to do that as well. Dennis Jenkins, it's really been a much-needed improvement for them because, again, it's really tough seeing Cade kind of take on as many triple teams and double teams as he does. It really adds to a lot of the turnovers that he had. And it adds to, how tired he kind of gets seemingly when he plays, late in games. So, knowing that they've finally got some extra help to be able to kind of take that pressure off of him is huge. And if they are to kind of, pull the trigger on one of those kind of moves, again, I definitely don't think it'll be an Anthony Davis kind of player. It's going to be the in Tratehn Langdon, tenure for the Pistons because obviously the core that's set up right now, it was set up under Troy Weaver. And for the most part, Tratehn, I don't want to say hasn't had to, make a ton of big moves yet based on the injuries they've had and based on the success that they've had. So when they do make that move, again, a lot of the names I'm not really a huge fan of. I'm not a huge fan of the Lauri Markkanen idea. Obviously, Andy Davis is another one I think that just came up that I wasn't a huge fan of. So they have to find that perfect piece, whoever it is, but they're in a position right now where they don't need to rush it based on the success they're having.
The nice part is they have a lot of these guys that have filled roles where it's harder to see what they actually need because these guys have all risen to the occasion and filled in for each other so well. Jeff, you've been shaking your head at these options. You're not a big fan of the Anthony Davis. I think this is unanimous. So you're not a big fan of that idea either. That one cracked me up because the fact that NBA Centel also cited that it's like, wait, this is a rumor and a spoof at the same time.
I have to imagine that what Dallas would want in return, and Anthony Davis cannot stay healthy. There is just no way. All he would do is he'd be the water boy on the bench, and that Markkanen is the same way. They'd have to give up too much. I think Duren's play, I don't think they expected him to be this much better than last year, but he worked his tail off in the offseason, and I think he's exceeded expectations, and I think it really makes it hard to give up so much for a player when Duren has really stepped up his game, especially offensively.
I agree. And Eric, one of my favorite things about the lineup that's changed from last year to this year to a degree is the fact that they're playing Stu and Duren together more. And I think that's going to punish some opposing defenses because, like you said, those guys play tough. And the fact that they've grown enough where they can work on the court at the same time, offensively and defensively, is impressive on both sides.
Yeah, that's been an extremely encouraging development for him. Stu was really excited last season to come off the bench and kind of focus on being, the five, for the second unit. But when Tobias went down with his injury, it opened up an opportunity for him to kind of go back to that stretch four role. But he still played to his identity. I feel like when he tried it the first time under Monty Williams, it really wasn't comfortable for him because he was looked at as a primary shooter for the team, and that just really isn't what he is. He's a banger down low. He likes to do the dirty work and, chasing and scrapping for offensive rebounds. Obviously one of the best defenders in all of basketball, even for a six-man, one of the best rim protectors in all of basketball. And knowing that him and Duren have kind of taken some leaps in terms of their offensive game as well has been phenomenal. Like we talked about what JD has done, but then Stu, who's, excelling a little bit more as a shooter. One of the concerns I had like a couple years ago when he was, was getting extended minutes with Cade. Cade loves throwing the lob, and it really was kind of discouraging at times where Duren will be hurt, and they kind of lost that with Stu because he's a lot smaller. But now he's dunking everything. He's playing above the rim. He's playing nasty. He's got the confidence to kind of create his own shot. And he's in sync with Cade when those pick and rolls, come into play, and he's able to take those pocket passes and finish them over the rim. It's been really exciting to see them kind of be in sync so well. And it goes to Cade's credit as well because Cade has, of all, stars and the superstars in the NBA, he's never had another co-star next to him, and he's still been able to put up all-star level numbers despite the circumstances. whether it's young guys around him, veterans like Tobias Harris, Malik Beasley, or Tim Hardaway Jr., Duncan Robinson, guys that are kind of like cast-off veterans to some extent, but he's still able to produce and now play winning basketball. Or even a guy like Dennis Jenkins, who's a two-way G League guy, who's now looking like he could possibly be on the NBA roster as well. It's just really exciting to see how they've all managed to fit in and expand their games. And, again, it's taking them in a winning direction and showing how great they can be in this Eastern Conference.
I'm glad you kind of ended that point with Cade, because you had a great article about him scoring in the clutch, and obviously he's doing everything for this team, and he's the one that makes it go. It's like we're getting so used to his greatness that then we don't talk about it as much. We talk about, oh, well, Duran's playing better than we thought. Oh, Stewart's got a more well-rounded game. Oh, Thompson defensively, whatever it is. But I mean, yeah, Cade's the rising tide that's lifting all of his teammates as the boats there, and he's impressive to watch. I'm glad we have him on our team. But I appreciate you joining the show, Eric, and I appreciate all the great points and the great conversation. Want to give you a chance to make sure to tell people where they can follow you here. We'll try to have you back on as the season progresses here to get an update and see how things are going. But want to make sure to highlight the YouTube presence and the clutch points as well.
Anytime, man. Thank you so much for having me on the show. It's been an awesome experience, man. You've got to follow me at I am Eric Vincent on my social media. My YouTube page is called Top Title Detroit. You can check out my coverage on there for the Pistons, some Lions stuff as well on there. And, of course, all my writing and coverage for the Pistons on clutchpoints.com. Really appreciate the time, y'all. Maybe we can get a little Monopoly war next time we can have a conversation. It'll be a good time. We'll make that happen.
I like it. Jeff's laughing. I think he likes that idea. But you seem like such a nice guy. I just don't know. I mean, maybe at 42 I can handle a kind of normal game of Monopoly. I say that, and then everything's going to be flying through the air. But we'll have to have you talk some lines at some point too, because I didn't realize you covered them as well. We could have had you cover the Jameis Winston experience that we talked about a little bit in the first segment, because I usually like watching it because it's like watching it's like a roller coaster, but man, that was mostly going up on Sunday. So I was kind of impressed by Jameis here.
Yeah, that had me at a day-to-day heart attack watching that game. I'm glad they came out with the win. Not really happy about how it came apart, but I'm happy they at least got it finished and get what they needed to get done. So hopefully they turn the tide. They need the momentum that the Pistons have right now, but they got a lot of work to do. So hopefully they turn that around, because they needed this in this competitive NFC right now.
Yeah, who knew the Pistons were going to be the grittier team for this period that they've been playing at the same time here.
Right.
So, both have a gritty identity, but yeah, this run that the Pistons are off to is amazing. So yeah, we'll make sure to have you back on as the season progresses, and we appreciate you joining the show.
Thanks, fellas. Y'all have a good night. Take care.
All right, you too. Thanks, Eric. Thanks, Eric Vincent. Appreciate him joining, and we'll send him back to the game here, because I think the Pistons are in a close game with the Pacers right now from what I saw last time I checked, so I'm sure he'll go back to following that. But we'll turn our attention to hockey next here. We'll have the Hockeytown Rundown guys come on, Carlo Mario and Zack Trathen. They always do a good job. They have a good podcast, do a good job covering the Wings for us, so we'll have them on for their first appearance of the regular season. Stick with us. You're listening to Sports Intel on Jethro FM. And we're happy to bring on these guys. They always bring a lot of good energy. They have a great podcast. They also work well together as far as we get them both in. That's tough for us sometimes. We're not really usually a two-line show, but they manage the two-line on their own. So this is Zack Trathen and Carlo Mario, our guys at Hockeytown Rundown podcast. And we got to talk here. I haven't been watching the game though. How's the game going so far? Also, we're celebrating the thing of the day, and I want to know both of your guys' favorite board game.
Ooh, that's a great question. Unfortunately, Carlo is unable to make it on today, so you guys are stuck with me, Zach, here. My favorite board game, I would say it would have to be Monopoly, only because Dane Cook had that amazing skit back in the day. Okay, Grandma, you win. So, yeah, that would have to be my favorite board game for sure.
Well, we're happy to have you. That'll work for us. Carlo was apparently too cool. Can you do a Carlo voice? Can you throw it to Carlo and then do a Carlo voice?
Oh, I don't know about that. Carlo's one of a kind, just like how I am. So that's going to be tough to beat. But I could try to answer as many questions as I can for Carlo. If I were Carlo, his favorite board game would probably have to be Uno because he always likes to throw the reverse cards on me.
Perfect. See, good answer. See, you know him well, so that's so that's a good answer. No, I'm excited to have you on. We'll have you guys back on, so we'll get Carlo in the mix here the next time. But yeah, I'm curious to get your thoughts on the season so far because I feel like we did kind of the best preview of the season of any of the people that covered the Wings for us because we talked a lot about the transactions because you guys were doing a lot of kind of fantasy booking stuff, fantasy GM stuff in the off season. And so we did talk about kind of the final result to a degree, but I'm curious what you think of the early returns because I think obviously they went kind of low. They didn't go for any of the big names. They didn't go for big contracts. They went for value guys. And so the nice thing about value guys is they don't have to do a lot to exceed the value that you use to bring them in. But also the big part of this team this year is the young guys playing well early, but wanted to talk about those free agents first and kind of get your assessment of each one and how they're doing as far as if you were putting the GM hat back on, if you're happy with your acquisitions so far this year.
You know, there's not really too much to complain about. Yeah, just touching on the free agent signings. I mean, you look at the standings right now. The Detroit Red Wings are first place in the Atlantic Division. Obviously, that helps out the team tremendously. You look at some of the names, though. They might not be putting up the point production that some of us have liked, but at least they're bringing some of that veteran presence. They're keeping the young guys calm, cool, collected, and we're seeing the results of that. One nitpick that I do have to say is John Gibson. Obviously, I think that's no secret that he's definitely been struggling out there on the ice. Deflections seem to be a hard point for the Detroit Red Wings right now, including in this game against New Jersey Devils. Luckily, they're in intermission. But, yeah, 2 deflected goals going in. Outside of that, I think everything's going pretty well with the current signings. Like you mentioned, no big names. But the bright highlight there is the fact that we've seen plenty of rookies get called up. They currently have Emmett Finney, Nate Danielson, Axel Sandin, Pelika up there. And then we saw Michael Branzik-Nygaard as well for a brief stint. I'm very confident that we will see him back up in the Detroit Red Wings uniform and plenty more to see, hopefully, this upcoming season.
They really did a good job improving their depth with those pieces because, like you said, a lot of them have hit, and maybe they're not flashy signings, but they fit well in the culture. They did bring some grit, like we talked about in previous interviews, and I just think they've done a good job of getting kind of filling in the gaps because you don't, like you said, you're going to look for the goals. You're going to look for kind of some of the flashy stats, but that's not what hockey is all about, especially at some positions. So, yeah, what do you make of the Gibson thing? I mean, Talbot has been great. I'm going to take the positive side of that. Mm-hmm. It's amazing how well he's doing with his turns in there. But I think everybody was hoping that Talbot would. I mean, this is probably exceeding most expectations for Talbot, given his age and everything. Even though he had a good year last year, but I think people were thinking of him as 1B, but he's been 1A for sure, and now we're looking more at 1 and 2 at the moment rather than 1A and 1B.
Yeah, I would agree with you there. We said on a couple episodes, our most recent came out yesterday, we even said that moving forward, Cam Talbot, until otherwise, is the starting goaltender moving forward. You look back at the New York Islanders game with John Gibson being in that complete, utter disaster, not just from a goaltending standpoint, but from the team standpoint. And you're going to get those. You look at this roster up and down, a third of the team is full of young players that have only played 2 seasons or less within the NHL, not just with the Detroit Red Wings. That's where the veteran presence comes in, like I mentioned. But talking on John Gibson, we did see some analytical stats that was provided to us online. And for whatever reason, this team, and I don't know if it's a John Gibson thing yet, but it could be where the team just does not block enough shots when he is in net. You can tell that the team maybe isn't as confident with John Gibson in net, but that could be on John Gibson to where he's telling him, hey, don't block my line of sight, move out of the way. I'll try to do my best with it. But there have been plenty of times where shots aren't being blocked or they're not being deflected in. And sometimes you look at them saying, glove side Johnny, you could have saved that puck for sure. And that's coined famously by Carlo, glove side Johnny.
See, we're still getting some Carlo material in here. I like it.
Yes, we are.
I'm glad you brought that up because I do feel like to a degree it seems like the guys in front of them are playing a little different, and I couldn't really put my finger on it because obviously they're all trying to play hard regardless of who the goalie is, but the players especially that were there last year have a good feel for what Talbot wants when he's in net, but none of these guys know what Gibson wants, and maybe it's one of those things where he has a hard time, like you said, communicating that, or he's telling them one thing and they're trying to do another, but it does seem like the alignment in front of them, and it's hard to do things about these tips and everything because that's a part of hockey, but a lot of that is feel for the game and some of it's luck, and so it's hard to plan for that part, but it does feel like when it feels like you don't even have to look at the back of the jersey and you kind of know who's in net by how it's played in front of them.
Yeah, 100%, and that's something that Carlo noticed very early on. Right after the very first game of the season against the Montreal Canadiens, I was very unfortunate to actually be a part of that game. I went to that game. We got blown out very easily by the Montreal Canadiens, but I will say the Centennial jerseys, fantastic jerseys. They're the greatest sweaters on this planet currently right now. If you're an NHL hockey fan or Detroit Red Wings fan, you need to go get one of those sweaters. But yeah, you can tell just on his lateral movement is not quite there. It's still not quite there. And even when it comes to his glove side, either his glove's too low or it's too high and he's not making the easy saves. And I go back to that New York Islanders game where that's exactly what happened, where the player just kind of let in an easy backhand goal in, and John Gibson was already looking down at the ice before the puck even really went in. So, and we do have to say this about John Gibson. He comes from a completely different conference, completely different division, where he comes from out west, comes over here to Detroit. So not only is it a player situation where he has to get acclimated to the team, but also in his life as well. We don't know what the situation is with his family, if he's got kids, his kids got to get used to everything. So it could be a cultivation of things, so to say. So, but hopefully down the stretch, because that's where the Red Wings seem to struggle the most with goaltending, is when they get closer to that trade deadline. If John Gibson can turn it around once we get deeper into there and not have to burn out someone like Cam Talbot because of his age, like you mentioned, he's 38 or 39 years old, then there's still an opportunity for the Red Wings to maintain their spot. But this division right now, the Atlantic Division, is so close that if you lose 2 or 3 games in a row, you're going to drop all the way down to that 8th spot within the division. It's very close.
The parity really carried over from last year. It is amazing how, I mean, I know it's early in the season, but it does seem like it's going to be a bit of a dogfight as they go on. But yeah, I mean, I loved the plan going in. It seems to right size that goalie rotation. You've got a lot of young goalies that, somebody's going to rise up, and, whether it's Kosa or they're getting good play from a lot of the goalies, regardless of level and where they're located, whether it's the Griffins or Augustine at Michigan State. So you don't know when those guys are going to make it to the pro level, but you wanted to buy at least a year or two. But I think in the heads of management, it was okay, great. Hopefully we can get another year out of Talbot, and then we go forward with Gibson and presumably Kosa or whoever has risen to the occasion from the AHL or wherever we're getting the next goalie from. But now that's a little bit up in the air given his play, but I think you brought up a great point, which I think is underrated. These are all people, and we lose track of that. How you can be injured, you can have mental health issues, you can have family issues. They have to deal with all the same things the rest of us do, and this is a very transient. Sports are transient as a whole, and he had to move his life. He had to figure out a new team, a new city, a new everything, just like his family did. And I think that's a great point. Some of these places appeal to people. We were talking about the Detroit culture and how that appeals to some people. It might take a little longer for him and his family to adjust, and maybe a few months into the season he's loving it and he's really finding his form. But yeah, he might have to get some things into place first, both on the ice and off.
Yeah, and that's a great point that you brought up too. Kind of backtracking to the young goaltenders, you mentioned Sebastian Cossa. Even with Grand Rapids, they have Postava, who was a signing in the off season, who came in from overseas. He's looking fantastic too. That's like a 1A, 1B situation over there, but Postava is still technically injured. You brought up Trey Augustine doing fantastic over there at Michigan State University. So sky's the limit right now. And you can even talk about goaltenders like Carter Gylander, who plays for the Toledo Walleye, who got a brief stint, played a couple games for Grand Rapids, and actually looked very comfortable out there. I would not be surprised if there is a point in time this season, whether if it's due to injuries or whatnot, that we will see one or the other of Cossa and or Postava. I do want to hesitate, though, that I know a lot of people are calling for Sebastian Cossa to be brought up to replace someone like John Gibson. I'm in a spot where I believe that if you were to send John Gibson down through waivers, I do believe that there would be another team that would be more than happy to grab him. But you bring up a great point, too, is that the timeline, right, is that John Gibson obviously comes with term. So you at least have him until next season as well. And then you got to figure out what you're going to do with Cam Talbot. Well, before the ending of last season, we also had someone like Peter Mrazek, who had one more season left on his contract. He got traded over to the Ducks. We also could have re-signed Alex Lyon, who's now with the Buffalo Sabres, who actually doesn't look too bad with them right now, even with them not having the greatest season right now. So that would be my one critical piece on Steve Yzerman. I try not to be as harsh on him because obviously he's a Detroit Red Wings legend. He's our general manager, but yeah, looking at it, you traded away a second-round pick for John Gibson. I think there was another pick included in that with Peter Mrazek, and it's tough for people not to start asking questions and start bringing on the table for someone like Sebastian Cossa, who really needs to get NHL time so that way we can see what he actually can bring to the table for us in the future.
Yeah, eventually the doors got to open for these guys here, and I'm not. Yeah, I'm with you. I don't know about the whole thing of trying to send him through waivers and everything. That's too quick. We get too fast with our reactions to things because everything's we want it right now. Everything's an instant gratification right now in our culture. So that's not going to work at all. You got to see how this is going to work out because there's a definite possibility that this could level out like we're talking about because of one of a myriad of factors that could be in existence. So interesting conversation though about the goalie situation. Thankfully the future is bright, but hopefully they can work out the present. But I want to talk about, we got to take a quick break, but I want to talk about some of those young guys here because that's been obviously Finney you mentioned, but the young guys have been kind of the talk of the season so far and showing that Yzerman, hey, he's making some good picks. He's getting some good talent there. And now we're seeing it come to fruition with a largely pretty young roster, and they're playing pretty well. So we'll come back with Zack Trathen of the Hockeytown Rundown podcast. Stick with us. You're listening to Sports Intel on Jethro FM.
From the Scully Statewide Moving Studios in Granville.
Country with a twist. Jethro FM. 1530 AM. WYGR Wyoming Grand Rapids. 94.9 FM Grand Rapids. 99.5 FM Lowell. And Jethro South. 980 AM WAKV Otsego Plainwell. 98.9 FM Otsego. And 105.1 FM Kalamazoo. Available worldwide at jethro.fm.
But yeah, Zach, the talk of the season has obviously been, the primary name is Emmett Finney, but I do like that we're seeing these young guys rising to the occasion. I don't think anybody had Finney in the mix, except for at the end of camp there when he was starting to make some noise. But it's been fun to have this kind of story. But we did know that the youth movement was coming. We're seeing that down here in Grand Rapids because that they're playing very well down there, largely because of, like you said, the goalie situation and all the youth is down there. But I like that they've kind of realigned the team a little bit. They've got a couple of the more experienced guys to clear and go down to the AHL, and I think that's benefiting the team. And now in those spots, they're pulling up some young guys. That singular strategy seems to have worked. Not that it was a 2-for-2 transaction, but getting veterans down here and a couple young guys that we didn't necessarily think were going to make the team right out of the gate at the major league level, I think has really helped boost both levels of the organization.
Oh, 100%. And it's so funny that you brought up Emmett Finney, too. I know that he's a talking point right now. He actually just got an assist on James Van Riemsdyk's goal, who's also playing his 1100th game in the National Hockey League right now. So that adds on to his point total. He's got 11 points in the season now on his 23rd game of the season. Even talking about someone like ASP, Axel Sandin Pellikka, he's got 6 points. And then even someone like Nate Danielson, who's only playing in his 8th National Hockey League game, he's got 3 points, and he looked really good the other night. He put up 2 points in that game for his first NHL goal and his first career NHL assist. But yeah, I would agree with you that it's a nice little mixture. It's definitely a different scenario compared to last season, where we were still relying on a lot of the vets. We had players like Eric Gustafsson get sent down. Players like Justin Hall get sent down. We actually just recalled Eric Gustafsson because Simon Edmondson is out due to an illness with whatever that ridiculous bug is that's going around right now. Everything's going really well right now. Sky's the limit for the kids, and there's plenty more that we're looking forward to see going back to Sebastian Cossa and Trey Augustine and plenty of others. MBN's back down there. He's actually starting to light it up and pick it back up. Even when he was with the Detroit Red Wings, he was leading the team in hits in the first 9 games that he was playing with us. So, and touching on even some of the other guys, we still got Elmer Soderblom, we still got Jonathan Berggren, who continuously rotate for that 12th forward spot with players like James Van Riemsdyk. So it's a nice mixture. We're still trying to figure it out, and I think the team as a whole is still trying to figure out the system of what Tom McClellan is trying to implement. But it's a great thing that we have the core 4 players, as I like to call them, and Dylan Larkin, our captain, Lucas Raymond, Moritz Seider, who both have A's now on their sweaters, and then Alex DeBrincat, who just keeps lighting the lamp, who got the goal in this game for the Red Wings for the first goal.
Man, DeBrincat, that start to the season was rough because he was so close on so many attempts, and you knew it was going to turn. Like, it didn't take a hockey expert to know that, but yeah, once it did, man, he took off like gangbusters here, and those guys can't be talked about enough. But you know, you talk about Finney being a talking point, but rightfully so. I mean, it's amazing to see where he's come from, and he's still in, I think, the top 10-ish of points for rookies, and he's in the mix, and he's really mixing it up. He's getting the points, but he's making a lot of plays and mixing things up. He's playing like a guy that doesn't have anything to lose, because ostensibly he really doesn't. It's like, hey, I wasn't even really planning on being here, so as long as I'm here, I'm going to make the best of it.
Yeah, and I'm sure it was a little bit of a surprise to him, too, you know, being a young player at 19, 20 years old, you know, being surrounded by players at that caliber of Dylan Larkin, Lucas Raymond being in the league for a few years. Dylan Larkin, obviously, his tenure as a Detroit Red Wing within the NHL as well. Emmett Finney, not only is he able to produce some points, he's just an all-gas type of kid. And looking back even at the New York Rangers game that happened last week, where both teams were wearing their 100-year centennial jerseys, Emmett Finney was, you know, at the end of that game where that scrum took part because Jonathan Quick was a little sassy about the puck going in the net. Emmett Finney was right in the middle of it, getting in that scrum and with his helmet off, whitewashing guys and everything. He's a kid that we can see being with the Detroit Red Wings for a long time, as long as he continues to control his gas tank and just keep putting pedal to the metal.
I know we're celebrating the centennial this year, but was Quick trying to celebrate that in his own way? Why are we going so far back to defend the goal here? I feel like he's going very old school hockey with that one, and I get it to a degree, but it was like he was trying to put it in there as time expired. It's not like it's not like it was 10 seconds afterwards and he flipped it in there.
Right. Yeah, honestly, though, thank goodness that Jonathan Quick did do that, because we wouldn't have gotten the great photos that we got. I mean, there was a challenge going on amongst the Detroit Red Wings fan base to make that photo the background on your phone. It was the greatest trend, I think, that we could have seen happen this year and probably in the future as well. So it's definitely going to win NHL Photo of the Year. And just the color combo, the NHL needs to implement that a little bit more, where it's both home jerseys, the dark colors, and continuously add that within the games, because there's a lot of NHL teams that have amazing jerseys, not just the centennial jerseys. The Red Wings always have a great jersey, and you even look at the team that they're playing against right now, the New Jersey Devils, with their jersey. sweaters on tonight, and those are great jerseys too. So there's no such thing as a bad sweater in the NHL, in my personal opinion.
Oh yeah, we could do a whole segment on kind of the history, because I like, especially my memorabilia side of things, I like getting into that stuff and then seeing the markings on the different sweaters, and so I'm sure that could be a future segment here. But I wanted to go back to one of the things you said in one of the previous responses when you were talking about kind of trying to figure out the pieces right now with Van Riemsdyk, and you got some old and young, and trying to figure out where people fit. This seems to be the big difference between this year and last year. Last year, it just felt like we knew we were missing things, but it was hard to find them. You had to go out, okay, what are we going to do at the deadline? Oh, then we didn't end up doing anything, and then that created an issue. And now we're looking to free agency. Whereas this year, it has the feel of like, okay, between everybody that we have employed in the system, there's a lot of options here. I'm not saying that to have like a Stanley Cup level team. I'm just talking about a playoff run, a solid team to build on for next year. You've got this year to figure out which of these pieces can continue on. Some of these older guys can help contribute to the younger guys. But once you figure out how these guys match, I feel like they could hit a groove, because we're having some very inconsistent games, and to a degree that's hockey. But I do think it's finding the right fits and the right people on the right lines at the right times, and there's still some time for that, because there are a lot of new pieces this year.
Yeah, and that's the really great part about hockey, is that you truly never know what you're going to get. I know that there's obviously been things around the sports world where people are a little nervous to even sports gamble, so to say, because of what's come out lately. But hockey is truly one of those sports where magic just happens. Anything can happen. I do firmly believe, actually, that this is the year that the Detroit Red Wings make the playoffs, just because you look at even the injury report based on the teams within the division, within the conference, a lot of teams, and knock on wood right now, the Red Wings are not hit by that injury bug. There's still a lot of time to go this season. But to answer your question, yeah, it's a nice little mix here where Tom McClellan is still trying to shake up the lineup, see what fits, what doesn't. We're looking at players like Marco Casper, who's in a bit of a sophomore slump, who we pegged would be the feature 2C of this team, which he still very well could be. We saw him get bumped down to the fourth line against the Columbus Blue Jackets the other night. Now he's back up on the third line. We're still trying to figure out the pieces here. But, yeah, moving forward, we're trying to also figure out who the veterans are going to be on this team moving forward. It's no secret that cap's going to go up. There are going to be some teams that will need some cap, and we got to pay some of these young players too eventually. So we got to make some room, and that goes along with some of the young talent that we haven't seen yet make it to the Detroit Red Wings. There's still a lot of good players down there in Grand Rapids and even overseas as well. So sky's the limit for this team, and it's going to be really exciting to see what the coaching staff decides to do with the roster moving forward in terms of the lineups and everything else that comes with it.
I agree. They've got a lot of options, which is fun. It's going to be fun to see how this season plays out, and we'll definitely have you guys in the mix to help us go through the season here now that we're able to cover them every week here on Sports Intel. And we'll get Carlo in the mix the next time. He must not have wanted to talk to me today. I get it. That's fine. But we'll get him in the mix the next time. But make sure to tell people where they can follow you guys here in the meantime.
Yeah, Carlo does apologize. He wanted me to say that. He unfortunately had to take care of some at-home stuff. But nonetheless, he appreciates you guys keeping up with us. Yeah, for us, you can find us at Hockeytown Rundown. That could be on Twitter. Now it's known as X. You can find us on all the major social media platforms. You can go ahead and find our episodes on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. We truly do this for Detroit Red Wings fans, not just for ourselves, because we know a lot of people love the game and just love to talk shop just as much as we do. So whatever we can do, and if anyone has any great ideas, go ahead and leave it down in the comments for us, and we'll always engage with you guys. We truly appreciate the love and support.
There is a lot of fan engagement there. I have two ideas that I've floated in different interviews here. One, I think there has to be a snake-related nickname for ASP. We got to bridge that gap. Maybe like the Viper. I don't know, something like that. So that's
the Detroit Vipers were a thing at one point too. So maybe you had something there.
Exactly. I think there, because you got the ASP part, the ASP part that was more in the Viper family. So I'm kind of brainstorming there. I also I think this was Ryan Randall that I was talking about this with. I want to get a promotion where everybody wears one of the, I think it's called a driver's cap, whatever the hat is that Trent Yawney wears. I want every, you know how they have like a white out or a whatever color in the audience. Think if everybody had one of those caps on, that would be the most intimidating audience you've ever seen.
Well, the Detroit Red Wings need to bring back. I know that to us, it's still the octopus is the mascot, the official mascot of Detroit Red Wings. If they could do something like that, where everyone in the crowd is wearing an octopus on top of their head, I would absolutely join in on that. I would go to every game throughout the season if they said that they wanted to do that for every game of the season. So I'm with you there.
Exactly. Just intimidation. So those are my two ideas that I'm submitting on the show. I've been kicking them around when we have these different interviews. So we'll talk about it the next time. But appreciate you coming on here. Be sure to tune into their podcast. They have great chemistry on that podcast. And like Zach said, they engage with the fans and give a lot of good information. So we appreciate you joining the show, and we'll look forward to having both you guys on here when it fits later in the season.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much. Truly appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks, Zach. We'll talk to you soon.
Yep.
All right. Thanks to Zack Trathen. Appreciate him joining us. We're going to go from Zach to Zach here. I should have booked all Zachs. I don't think we have a Zach Pistons contact. We have a Lions contact, but not Pistons, so I couldn't have gotten a Zach for that slot. But we have Zach Surdenik. He's a little bit of a multi-hat guy, as all these play-by-play guys are. He's the play-by-play guy for the Lakeland Flying Tigers, but he's also the host for men's basketball for the Spartans. So we'll talk to him about probably both of those things. Jeff is a big baseball fan, so maybe we can talk a little baseball with him. And the Spartans have been playing well so far, so we got to talk some hoops. So we'll bring Zach on after the break. Stick with us. You're listening to Sports Intel on Jethro FM. To give him another thing to do, to have him come on the show. So happy to welcome Zach Surdenik into the show. And Zach, we're celebrating National Board Game Week, so we want to know what Zach's favorite board game, when he does carve out, I don't know, a few minutes to play a board game, which one do you choose?
Oh, that's good. I haven't played a ton of board games recently. I was really big. I loved Clue as a kid. I'm a big Clue board game guy.
That's a good one. Colonel Mustard in the study with the lead pipe. I feel like is what I think. That's three. I think that's three actual options on the game. I might have made up some of those, but
no, you're right. That's fair. Yeah.
But earlier we were throwing Monopoly pieces with one of the guests because he picked Monopoly because he can never Clue. You can play in a calm way. Clue, you're more you're trying to figure it out and it's more secretive. Monopoly is just aggressive and Clue. That's a little bit more. You're in the spy mode, so that's good for sports intel here, but. We appreciate you joining the show. You got a lot of things to talk to you about. I was bringing up your ex as we were getting you on the show, and I wasn't sure I was going to ask you this question, but I found the answer to it. But I didn't realize you were doing the pregame hosting with local legend Matt Steginga. So how has it been working with him here?
Oh, Matt's great. I love Matt. He is really good broadcaster, really good to broadcast with, and a great guy. Stegs is phenomenal.
Yeah, that's got to be fun to do that. He's still a huge name here in Grand Rapids, and everybody talks about him. And so I'm glad to see him continuing on and you guys getting to work together here. But, man, you guys have a good season to talk about thus far. I feel like the Spartans kind of came in with not a lot of anticipation. They lost, obviously, Richardson to the draft, and they were kind of reloading, but they got that front court back, and that's a punishing front court for the college game. And now they're kind of rotating in the shooting guard, and as long as one of those shooting guards works out, I feel like this is a pretty good team, and they're surviving the classic Izzo gauntlet here early in the season.
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun. There's been some big games and some guys stepping up. Just actually talked with, you mentioned the shooting guard position. I just talked with Tratehn tonight for a Spartan profile for tomorrow's pregame show, and I really like the development I've seen from him at the two-guard position. Trey Fort can really shoot it, and he's got a lot of confidence to take a lot of those shots that you need him to take. And then, obviously, that front court that you mentioned has been great, but Jeremy Fears has been the story of the season, I think, for us, and he is just continuing to get better. Leads the country in assists and assist rate, and is only a redshirt sophomore, and it's going to be really, really fun to watch over the next couple of years.
obviously his brother had very good development, and now we're seeing that out of him. And yeah, I mean, the assist level for him, and he had the scoring to go with it this last game. I'm curious about that interview with Tang, because I feel like he's a guy that's going to come into his own as the season progresses. He's been a little inconsistent, which matches up with the fact that he hasn't played consistent minutes up until this year, and that shooting guard position is a little bit in flux, but in kind of a good way. I feel like the way that's positioned, that between him and Fort and some of the other guys that they throw in there, that they're going to get something out of that position every night. You just don't necessarily know who it's going to be, and then you have the consistent front court contributors in Carr, Kohler, and Cooper. There's got to be like a nickname for them. Have you developed a nickname for them, Zach? I feel like, I know they're not all C's. I know it's 2 C's and a K, but I feel like there's something that front court's got to have a nickname by the end of the season.
Yeah, I haven't thought about it, but you're right. Those guys have been so fun to watch, and obviously you know what you're going to get from Cohen, a highlight every night. But Jackson Kohler's just relentless on the boards. He's never going to stop. And then Cooper has found ways to impact the game on offense this year, and that's been a big talk from Coach Izzo and from this team in the offseason, was how much he's worked on and improved his offensive game. And he's been a little inconsistent, but he had that game against San Jose where he finished with 17, and he could have had 22 if he made his free throws, and he's a good free throw shooter. Just didn't shoot it well that night, and they struggled a little bit over the start of this season, but he'll come around consistently throughout his career. He's been good at the line, so I have no doubts that he's going to do that. And, man, I'll take our bigs against pretty much anybody out there. There's a couple of teams that maybe have a better front court, but not many.
Well, and the variety of skills that they have, like you said, Cooper is doing a little bit of everything. He's developed a shot here, but we haven't seen it as much yet, but I feel like that might be coming. Kohler, I feel like people look at Kohler and go, this guy can't shoot, right? He can't be the relentless hustler and rebounder and tough guy and also shoot from the outside, but he's got a nice looking jumper, and that's paired nicely with his game. So I think he's going to come on nicely. And all three of those guys, Carr clearly too, especially the way his jumper's been trending. He's looked better as the season has gone on, more confident as an outside shooter, because we know once he gets practically within 15 feet of the rim, you better watch out, because he's going to be headed towards there. But if he can develop that outside shot, man, the type of prospect and impact he could be have to that team would be amazing, because he's already a great defensive player. He's got the vertical that could set the record, apparently, if they've got somebody from the Guinness Book of World Records out there. So you got to set that up, Zach, in your abundant free time. But yeah, he's starting to look like he's feeling more confident as a shooter here.
Yeah, for sure. He's worked a ton on that, and you've also seen the playmaking ability for him grow. The shooting and the improvement of the shot was something that was talked a lot about last year, and he continued to grow with that last year, and he's gotten a lot better even into this year. But his ability to put the ball on the floor and make a play is something that's been really key. We saw him have a 5-assist game already this year. And so when he is able to create for others, that makes him so much more dangerous, because you already mentioned you better watch out when he goes to the bucket. If you get a guy like Cohen Carr driving to the bucket, and he's also able to make the right pass and make the next play. And as Coach Izzo put it when we talked to him about it before the year, if he's able to play off of 2 feet coming off those screens, good luck stopping him, because you've got to stay in front of him. You've got to try to stop him from getting close to the bucket, which is tough enough because he's strong enough going to the lane. But if he's able to drop it off when you bring that help, that's going to be a real tough night for you.
Oh, of course, because, yeah, I think you make a great point that you've got to protect that rim against him and watch him on the backside, because I mean I remember that dunk that he had. He, like you said, he's always got at least one highlight reel dunk each game, and that one where I think it was Fears basically alley-ooped him from like mid-court. As soon as I saw him release, it's like, oh, there he goes. He gets to the rim so fast, and so if he can develop those other parts of his arsenal, then he's going to be really difficult to stop. And there's always a compound effect to these Izzo teams, especially the way he schedules, because he puts them through the gauntlet early in the season and makes sure to see what his team's made of and see where the holes are, see what he needs to improve. But it also means that these guys grow over the course of the season. We saw it with Richardson last year. He obviously came in with a lot of publicity and he had the name recognition and all that, but he wasn't really playing as much and then grew as a result of the schedule and the minutes he was getting. I'm curious if you kind of have your eyes on somebody to do that this year here.
Well, I don't know that we're going to have anybody come out of nowhere, I guess. I mean, Richardson didn't come out of nowhere, but I think that the guys this year that you're going to continue to see that improvement are the guys that are already contributing quite a bit. You'll see it from the shooting guard position. Cam Ward and Jordan Scott are going to be both really good players too. So you'll see some development there. But I think the biggest thing we're going to continue to notice is what this team, this core group can do. And it's something I was talking with Will Tiemann earlier this week, our play-by-play broadcaster, about what a difference a year makes. Last year, this time of year, we were in Maui, and we were getting ready for a game against North Carolina, and had just lost a tough game to Memphis, and it was kind of like nobody knew what that group was going to be. Well, then that team rattles off a bunch of wins. They don't lose again until February, win 30 games, make the Elite Eight, win the Big Ten by 3 games. And then this year we come in, and people don't really know what this team's going to be, and we're 5-0. We've already beat Arkansas and Kentucky. And so that is really just the vibe around everything is kind of changed. And I think a huge part of that is this core of this group and the leadership of these 4 guys that are coming back that are just absolutely huge.
They did really retain a lot of the talent. There was a lot made of Richardson leaving, which I think everybody was in agreement, including Izzo, that he should indeed leave. But they retained a lot of other talent. They also lost Akins and some other guys, but they retained a lot of talent, and that leadership is important, especially for Izzo teams. He doesn't necessarily trust youngsters. That's what was unique about Richardson, is that he actually trusted them. Partially probably because he had known him since he was a kid. He had known his dad before he was born and all of those things. But yeah, this is the continuity of a classic Michigan State team where you go, okay, they're not blowing the doors off when you look at the roster at the beginning of the season, but then as they develop, as they get that chemistry, they have the leadership, they have the toughness, then they're going to be a classic Izzo team that's probably going to be a tough out as you get closer to the tournament.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty safe thing to guess. I think that this group has so much, and I think this is a group that's going to continue to get better over the next couple of years too. You got a really good recruiting class coming in. You're going to lose the 2 bigs this year, or next year from this year's team, which is going to be tough. But you get some guys coming in, and you've got a lot of guys coming back from next year. I mean, Caleb Glenn would have been a huge piece on this team before he got hurt before the season, and he's not going to play this year. They don't want to use up the year of eligibility, but for a guy that tore his ACL, man, he has recovered really fast, and I think Coach Izzo said something about him recovering faster than anybody he's ever seen, and so he's going to be a big piece. He was a 40% three-point shooter at FAU and would have been a really good piece on this year's team, but now he's going to get a year off, almost like the old days when you got a transfer and they had to sit for a year. That's kind of what you're getting with Caleb Glenn, and he's got 2 more years of eligibility, plus Fears will be a junior, Carr will be a senior, Tang will be a junior. You'll get a lot of these guys in that are just going to continue to get reps and reps and reps, and it's looking really good for the next couple of years for MSU.
It's nice when you don't have to necessarily reload as an Izzo team. You kind of get those guys that last a little bit longer because he keeps guys in the system, and then you've got more continuity, which is always a huge benefit to his teams. But we got to take a quick break. Want to talk a little bit more Spartans and want to talk about how the season finished up for you on the baseball side, because we didn't talk later in the season. So we'll bring Zack Trathen back for another segment and have more conversations with him. Always a good guy to talk to. Stick with us. You're listening to Sports Intel on Jethro FM. I'm curious how the season finished up for you. Obviously, the Flying Tigers had a good season, like basically every part of the Tigers organization. But I'm curious what that looks like for the transition, because it's not a lot of off season for you. The MLB has a notoriously long off season, but Zack Surdenik does not have a long off season.
I do not, but I will say the baseball to basketball transition is easier than the basketball to baseball transition. Basketball to baseball is crazy. So last year we finished up in Atlanta in the Elite Eight. And that was on a Sunday night. We flew back to East Lansing right after the game on Sunday. By 24 hours later, Monday night, I was driving through Atlanta to go to Lakeland. So I had no off season that on the basketball to baseball side. But baseball side, on the minor league side, we finished up in the middle of September. And so I had about a month before we started. And that's pretty much the only off season that I get. But it was actually pretty nice to kind of get some relaxing back home. I'm from Lansing, so back up in the Michigan area and get to relax a little bit before we started the season. But, man, that was a fun finish to the year for the Flying Tigers. What a run they had this year. And it was a team with that wasn't loaded with top prospects. You had Bryce Rayner earlier in the year, but then he got hurt. And beside that, we didn't have another top 10 prospect in the system all year outside of the 2 weeks McGonigal was with us for a rehab. But we won a lot of games, and, I mean, you win the first half, the second half, and the title, and you can't do much better than that.
No, that's what's amazing about the organization as a whole, because there was a lot made of the big three and McGonigal and Clark and Briseño and a lot of the guys that are coming up through the system. And obviously they were here in Grand Rapids for a little while and then moved up. And then it was kind of like by the end of the season, oh, okay, the cupboard's not quite as full, but whoever was here was still performing very well. Same with Lakeland. That was a lot of fun to see, because you truly see the depth, because a lot of us, you see all these guys from day to day. So you know the names a lot better. You have to call them out, but a lot of the regular fans have a tough time with some of these deep prospects, but it shows how deep the system is as a whole. If you can lose the guys that you did and lose basically a whole wave of guys and then go, wait a minute, yeah, we won it every phase. We won the first half, the second half, and we won the championship. We carried that forward through the season. So then, you've got good management, a good system in place, but that had to be fun to see different names cycle through, but still the same level of success.
Yeah, it was a blast. And there was, and one thing that just kind of, for me, showed the connectedness of the organization. Now, the Flying Tigers are a little different than some minor league organizations because we're owned by the Detroit Tigers and by Illich Sports and Entertainment and all of that group. But we were in the clubhouse celebrating the title, and we're able to watch the Whitecaps win the title while we were in there, and everybody was going crazy when they finished it off, too, because they won about 20 minutes after we did. And it was just a blast of a night and of a down the stretch, especially because we struggled down the stretch in August. So started the second half 20-4, and then really went into quite a big slump when we had that transition, as you mentioned, guys coming in, guys coming out. And I was talking to one of the coaches before the playoffs, one of our assistants, and they were talking with us, and it was me and a couple other guys, and we were talking about the fact that it's going to come. It's a brand new group of guys, brand new team. They just got to get settled in. And at the start of the year, Lakeland, the first 3 weeks of the season, we're under 500. Through the month of April, we're under 500. And then won the first half by multiple games, finished 20 games over in the first half. And then the same thing in the second half, the opposite way, where we started red hot, lost a lot of guys, and then we won the final 3 games of the regular season and then swept through the playoffs. There wasn't even really a close game in the playoffs. The only game that was close was a 7-5 win that the score was 7-2 at one point.
Baseball is amazing to me because it is just so streaky. You play so many games in the minor leagues. You have the transient nature that we're talking about. In the major leagues, you got 162 games to deal with, so it's going to be dependent on health and rally caps and things like that. Because we had Nate Robertson on the show fairly recently, and we were talking about how big gum time was. Like, people may think that's silly, but that kind of stuff can spark an entire team, because really the team is pretty consistent at that level throughout the year. At your level, it's okay, we got to reload, and then we got to figure out how these guys play together, because you got to reestablish the clubhouse culture, which is so valuable to baseball, especially with young guys.
And I think there's some guys off this Lakeland team that are going to be some fun names. There may not be we'll have to see. Some of these guys are so young, so it's kind of tough to tell and say, this guy's a for sure big leaguer. But there are guys on this roster that are going to be fun. I'm excited to see who we have back from this playoff roster in the spring in Lakeland and who starts up in West Michigan and where some of these guys go, because it's going to be a lot of fun to follow their journeys, because there's some guys with a lot of talent. Our top pitcher heading into the playoffs is disgusting, and there's going to be a whole lot more talk about Kelvin Salcedo coming down the line from people in the industry, I think, because he can really spin it. In Game 1 of the championship series, he had never thrown more than 5 innings, only 19, but they had to send him out for the 6th. And the way you make sure they go out for the 6th, you throw 15 up, 15 down on 49 pitches in Game 1 of the championship. You're going to go out for the 6th. He didn't go too far into the 6th. He hit a batter and gave up a hit. But those were the only base runners that we allowed in that entire game. That pitching staff was so good. But Salcedo is really good. And then you've got a lot of other prospects that will be coming up through the line as well, and some draft guys from this year that are fun. And it's going to be cool to watch these guys going into next year and see where everybody ends up.
It's hard to get pulled if you're averaging under 10 pitches an inning. That's hard to get pulled. Yeah, that's impressive. Who are some of the other guys that caught your eye? I know there's probably several. It's not an exclusive list, but who are some of the other guys that caught your eye?
Yeah, some guys just off the top of my head. Throughout the year, obviously Bryce Rayner is really good, and the injury was unfortunate, but I'm sure he's going to be great moving forward. Frangeva Montilla is really solid as well. He's an electrifying player. He also got hurt and missed the end of the year. So those guys were big pieces that went down, but those guys are well-known prospects. A guy that I loved getting to know this year and is really, really talented, and I think the Tigers got a steal, is an outfielder by the name of Nick Dumanil. He was an 8th-round pick by the Tigers this year, but coming into this past year after a monster sophomore season at Cal Baptist and a really good year on the Cape, he was potentially a projected first-round pick. And he had a few struggles, a couple of weeks of a slump at Cal Baptist, and some numbers went up, and some people got worried about a few things in his profile, I think, based on reading some of the draft stuff from like The Athletic and some of those other places. And so he fell, and he was projected a 4th-round pick, but the Tigers got him in the 8th. And he was really good for us. He's got really good power, and he didn't even show that. He didn't hit a home run with us, but he hit some doubles, and he can fly on the base paths and fly in the outfield. When I talked to him for one of our interviews, he just talked about always wanting to play aggressive and always wanting to force somebody to make a move, put pressure on him, and just be aggressive in all senses of the game, and he was. And he is a blast to cover, and I am excited to see what he can do over the next couple of years.
That's one reason it's nice to talk to you guys about this kind of stuff. We talked to several of the play-by-play guys throughout the system, and you guys get to talk to these guys, and that's such a big part of baseball because, I mean, they're scouting them so young now, and a lot of we talked with somebody about this. I don't remember who it was. Maybe it was somebody from Tigers Minor League Report, but we were talking about how that a lot of the systems, a lot of the teams don't send scouts and actually have them talk to the players. A lot of it's done because you can get the tape from everywhere now, but there's a value to talking to these guys. You see that because you see what the personalities are, because really that's a big part that's going to make or break a guy that's 18, 19 years old, is how hard he's going to work, what his mentality is, because you can overcome maybe a difference in skill set or whatever, because you can improve, you can work hard, improve your swing, be open to coaching, be open to improvement. Maybe you grow. I remember they were talking about one of the prospects in the system that his brother had grown a lot after age 18. So then they were kind of thinking, oh, well, this might be kind of a family genetic trait. All those things can factor in. And if you can have more interaction with the players, you can learn a lot more about them, because just looking at statistics and the different swing angle stuff and all that stuff, that'll take you only so far.
Yeah, and I think that this group was so much fun. And I also want to shout out our manager. Rene Rivera was spectacular this year. He's going to be a guy that I think you're going to hear a lot more about moving forward. He won first year in Lakeland, won the title, first half, second half, and the championship. Goes to the Arizona Fall League. I'm pretty sure his team won the championship there, too. Now, it helps to have Kevin McGonigal on your roster, but Renee is great. He was great with us all year. I loved working with Renee, and I'm excited to see what he can do going forward and what this organization can do, because there were so many guys, if I tried to mention everybody that stood out, we'd be here all night. But there were so many guys that were so much fun, and I've been really blessed to get to work with two great organizations between the Tigers system and Lakeland, and then here with Michigan State. It's been spectacular.
Oh, yeah. Two places that really value that side of things, too, the commentating side of things. We talk about that with a lot of the Tigers commentators because it's clearly an emphasis for them and for probably Detroit as a whole, but Michigan State is focused on that as well. So definitely the right pick on both sides, having you there, and you got a bright future ahead of you. But I want to make sure to give you a chance to tell people where they can follow you, social media, the games coming up, whatever else you're doing that I didn't highlight here, because there's probably some things that maybe you're calling some Little League games somewhere because you got a couple extra hours in a day. I don't know what you're doing in your free time here.
Yeah, well, at the moment I don't have much on the side. They're keeping me pretty busy here at MSU, but you can follow my social media on Twitter at Zack Surdenik, and I think Ryan tagged me in the post there if you can't spell it. But so I'm on Twitter. That's probably the main one I'm on. And you can catch all our stuff on any Michigan State Spartan Media Network affiliate in the state or on the MSU Athletics app. All of our games are there. We go live an hour before tips. So this week we're down in Fort Myers. We start the pregame show starts at noon tomorrow for East Carolina, and then we're on at 3:30 against North Carolina on Thursday, and we're there all year long, and it's been good. So we appreciate you guys tuning in and having fun with us on the air. We're having a blast. So.
Oh yeah, definitely got to tune in to see you, to see Matt, local legend, like I said, and yeah, the team's great this year. So we'll be tuning in and we'll be following you, and hopefully we'll be able to reconnect with you later in the year. But appreciate you carving out the time and making time for us, and we'll look forward to talking to you again soon.
Yeah, of course. Thanks so much for having me on.
All right, thanks, Zach. We'll talk to you later.
Yep, thanks.
Thanks to our second Zach of the day. We appreciate Zack Surdenik coming on and joining us and talking both things here, Flying Tigers and the Spartans. So we'll take a quick break, and then Jeff and I will finish up the show after the break. Stick with us. You're listening to Sports Intel on Jethro FM. Board game week, technically, but everybody's going to turn their attention to Thanksgiving soon. I'm going to ask Jeff about his Thanksgiving plans here in a minute, but want to thank our guest, Zack Surdenik, Zack Trathen. Hopefully we'll get Carlo Mario on the next time, but Hockeytown Rundown, be sure to tune into them. Eric Vincent of Clutch Points and YouTube fame there. But yeah, we appreciate all of them joining the show, as well as our sponsor support, Mary Freebed, Collectible Insurance Services, Eric Hall, Aesthetic and General Dentistry, Calder Financial, Grand Management Group, Ride In Investments, Encore Business Group, and Jim Hegland of JH Realty, and Williams Chiropractic. Dr. Williams, he was on last week. Good stuff from him. We are going to do a show here. We want to preview the Jethro lineup. We got the Sports Project on Wednesday. We'll be back with that. Big G covered last Wednesday. I didn't get to listen to him, but I'm sure Steve Project will be back for that from 7 to 9, and then we'll actually have Shane Graham's Extra Points with Ryan Walsh from 7 to 9 on Thanksgiving. We'll have some live results from the game, so Jeff, we're gonna do a draft of the Thanksgiving food. That's one of the activities we're going to do on the Thanksgiving show. Is everybody that's involved in the show, they're going to put together their meal, a main course, 2 sides, a dessert, and what commentating team you would like to listen to. Now I'm putting you on the spot with all this. I'm not expecting an answer for all of this, but at least the meal part. What are you looking forward to here on Thanksgiving?
It's got to be the stuffing, homemade stuffing every year.
That's a good one. See, I'm curious whoever drafts stuffing, because some people still like the stovetop stuffing, and that's amazing to me.
See, and I used to as a kid, and then you get some of the homemade stuff, and you can't go back. Once you go homemade stuffing, you can't go back to the box.
Mom across from you here, she makes a great one. She puts sausage in it, apples, all that stuff. Yeah. And so, that'll be high on my list. Hopefully Shane and them aren't listening here to the Intel on Sports Intel, because we'll be doing the draft and we'll be covering the game. It'll be fun. The day of coverage, we'll probably have some of the earliest coverage of the actual Lions game, because not a lot of people are going to be going live on Thanksgiving. But Jeff, we appreciate you being on the show. Hopefully you'll want to come back here.
Absolutely.
and
Thank you so much for having me.
Chat with us. Be sure to tune in to Jeff on Saturdays. What time is the All Request show on Saturday?
All Request show kicks off at 7:00 till midnight.
That's way past your bedtime. 7 to midnight.
Past my bedtime.
We're already keeping him up past his bedtime now. He's ready to go home and go to bed here.
I thought this Monday would be a great start because it's a short week for me, so I'll recover.
Okay, but be sure to tune in to Jeff on Saturdays there. I think that's a great concept that you can call in and stuff. Sadly, we don't let people call into this show, but maybe eventually we'll see if people are interested. Maybe we'll have some conversations with the fans. But be sure to tune in to him on Saturday. Also, our buddy Mike with the Polka Pops is also on Saturday there. But then we'll have our show next week, obviously 7 to 9, Sports Intel, and then I think I missed the Sports Project from 10 to 12 on Saturday. I want to make sure to tune in to the Sports Professor there. So I'll talk to you on this show next week, and then we'll also talk to you on Thursday. So be sure to tune in. You've had your turkey, you've had your food. We will have had ours because we will have eaten at 10:30 in the morning. So we'll be ready to go. But tune in.
Be sluggish on Thursday night?
I don't know.
I mean, that's got to.
I think we'll maybe have enough time to recover because we are eating literally at 10:30 in the morning, so we can watch the Lions game, and then maybe quick nap, and then in here because Dan will be in here with us too. So I don't know how sluggish he's going to be. He's going to be part of the draft too. D Money is going to be part of the draft. So tune into that and tune in to us next week. Until next week, stay informed and stay vigilant. Have a great week.
Sports Intel with Ryan Walsh.